Hey guys! Urban legends, unsubstantiated creepy stories that allow us to use our imaginations to add increasingly horrifying details with each retelling have been with us forever. While the internet has made them easier to spread, people have been tormenting each other with frightening legends for centuries. Psychologists believe we react to these stories because we have a morbid fascination with disgusting things. We also derive pleasure from gossip. Combine these two propensities and you have a combination that is impossible to resist. Urban legends often come with a dose of skepticism. But sometimes these stories turn out to be true. But before we begin, subscribe to our channel, give us a like and post the video on social media. Rats in the toilet. You get out of bed and weave to the toilet to do the needful. In a half-asleep state, you lift the toilet lid, sit down and suddenly hear the splash of water. Turning on the light, you see a rat swimming in the toilet bowl. That's it, your life will never be the same again. Animals in sewers are the most popular subject of creepy urban legends. For example, everyone has heard the story about small alligators, which through the toilet bowls get into the channels with waste and after some time turn into adults, growing to incredible size. This supposedly happens most often in New York City. Not true. Yes, crocodiles and alligators have indeed been found in New York City. However, it was usually above ground. It is also believed that they are unable to survive in this metropolis because the climate here is too cold for them. But finding a rodent in the toilet bowl, a few centimeters away from very vulnerable areas of your body, can be considered a special kind of domestic terror, and it's very real. Toilet drains are usually about 8 centimeters or more in diameter. A rat can easily fit in them. These rodents are attracted to sewer lines because of the undigested food contained in feces, so they can travel through the pipes and suddenly appear in your toilet. And yes, rats can be very vicious when they manage to get out. In 1999, for example, a resident of Petersburg, Virginia, USA, suffered a rodent bite while using the toilet. And in Seattle, the problem is so widespread that authorities are handing out advice on what to do if you encounter a rat in your toilet. Quickly close the lid and flush. The legend of Polybius. Fans of old video games have long swapped stories about the strange effect a coin-op arcade game that originated in Portland in the 1980s had on players. The game, called Polybius, allegedly caused feelings of disorientation, amnesia, gaming addiction, and even led to suicide. The game machine was said to be completely black. It was also rumored that stern-looking men would sometimes come to the arcade slot machines to take the information they needed, then disappear. Was this a CIA experiment, spun off from Project MK Ultra, which investigated the effects of psychoactive substances on unsuspecting subjects? Brian Dunning, host of the Skeptoid podcast, did research and discovered that a 12-year-old boy named Brian Morrow became ill during a 28-hour video game competition in Portland in 1981. He had apparently drunk too much soda and was experiencing stomach discomfort. Just a few days later, federal agents seized the premises and the machines used for the games. A combination of a real-life arcade game called Polyplay and memories of the incident became the basis for the legend of Polybius. Candyman. Released in 1992, the movie Candyman, based on Clive Barker's short story, remains a potential revenge horror flick about a black artist, Tony Todd, who was murdered in the 1890s for having an affair with a white woman. While it's unlikely that you'll be able to summon him by using a mirror and saying his name a few times, the idea of a killer appearing from an apothecary cabinet is actually quite real. In 1987, the Chicago Reader published the story of Ruth McCoy, a woman who lived in a Chicago apartment complex. She called 911 to report that she had been attacked in her own apartment. Rescuers who arrived on the scene found the woman's dead body. She had died from gunshot wounds. Investigators determined that the attackers had gained access to her apartment through a wall on which a pharmacy locker was hanging. The complex was built so that plumbers fixing leaks could simply remove the locker to check the pipes. This has become a popular method of entry among burglars and murderers, as in McCoy's case. Cropsey. For years, children who live in Staten Island, one of the 5 boroughs in New York City, have been told a gruesome story about Cropsey, a boogeyman who lived in the woods and had a habit of gutting children at night. Parents, of course, reassured their children by saying that no such monster existed. But there was. In 1987, Andre Rand stood trial and was convicted of child abduction. Rand, it turned out, may have been linked to the epidemic of childhood mental illness in the 1970s. He once worked at Willowbrook, a former mental health facility. And while he denies being involved in other cases, his work definitely had a big impact on the stories passed down by word of mouth. The lawyer who flew out the window. Everyone in Toronto knows the story of the lawyer who had a habit of jumping out of the windows of an office building to demonstrate their strength. In the end, the glass of one of them did not withstand, and the man flew down with it, breaking to death. This legend is based on real events. Harry Hoy worked at a local law firm with an office on the 24th floor. He had a habit of demonstrating the strength of the windows in the building by jumping on them. On July 9, 1993, Hoy decided to impress the practice students and performed his crowning jump. The glass failed and he flew down, crashing to his death. Body under the bed. Couples on vacation. Honeymooners. Visitors to Disneyland. They were all characters in an urban legend about hotel guests who couldn't sleep because of the horrible stench coming from under the bed or from the mattress. The reason for this was the hidden corpse of a man who clearly did not die a natural death. This legend is based on real events. Newspapers often published stories about bodies found in hotel rooms. In fact, the disgusting odor was almost immediately disconcerting to guests, but at least one couple spent the night on the mattress in which the corpse was hidden. This happened in Atlantic City in 1999. Similar cases have been reported in Florida, Colorado, and Virginia. In 2010, guests at a budget hotel in Memphis were horrified to find they were sleeping on the body of missing girl Sonia Millbrook. At least 3 people had stayed in the room before them, and they hadn't noticed anything. The court eventually convicted Millbrook's young man, Lakate Moody, of murder. Maine Hermit. For decades, people who vacationed near North Pond in Maine noticed that their belongings were going missing. Batteries, food, flashlights from camping tents. Rumors began to swirl that someone was living in the woods. Indeed, for 27 years, Christopher Knight lived alone in the woods, watching for hikers, kayakers, and other temporary residents on the property. In 2013, he was discovered by a gamekeeper, at which point Knight admitted to committing about 40 burglaries a year. Criminals in police uniforms. You may have heard warnings more than once from concerned parents or friends that criminals can disguise themselves in police uniforms and use this to attack a victim who has let their guard down. And while not many people dress up in law enforcement uniforms or travel in police cars, there are many documented cases of assailants posing as police officers. For example, in Bloomington, Illinois, a man used his flashing beacons to pull over a vehicle. He attempted to attack the driver, but was unsuccessful. Tom managed to fend off the attack and drive away. In Fayetteville, Georgia, a man dressed up in a police officer's uniform and pulled over a teenager on a bicycle, forcing him to empty his pockets. The legend of the Bunny Man. If you lived in Virginia in the 1970s, you've probably heard the story of the Bunny Man, Bannerman. In it, a man who escaped from a mental institution takes to gutting rabbits and hanging their carcasses under a bridge. The maniac is said to have later started killing teenagers in the same way. Locals were warned never to wander under the bridge, now known to most people as Bannerman's Bridge, on Halloween night. In October 1970, a couple reported seeing a man who was dressed in a rabbit costume. He yelled that they had driven onto private property and threw an axe through the windshield. 2 weeks later, a security guard also spotted a man in a rabbit costume on the bridge. Police tried unsuccessfully to find Bannerman. Although he didn't kill anyone, the idea that he had an axe and a pair of rabbit ears is disturbing. Charlie without a face. Imagine you are alone in the dark on a residential street. You hear footsteps approaching. Suddenly, a person with a deformed face appears. You run away, scared to death. Afterward, you tell everyone the story of the man without a face, which soon spreads throughout Pennsylvania. Charlie without a face, or the Green Man, was a man whose real name was Ray Robinson, and he was not a figment of anyone's imagination. Born in 1910, Robinson had his face disfigured in an accident that happened to him at the age of 8. He touched bare wires that effectively mutilated him. Knowing that his appearance might frighten people, Robinson began going outside only after dark. He often walked along Route 351 in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. Although Robinson's intentions were honorable, People who encountered him deep into the night believed he was a boogeyman stalking the town. Robinson died in 1985. A corpse as a backdrop. Notorious outlaw Elmer McCarty found a second life after death. In 1911, McCarty's embalmed body became a macabre attraction throughout Texas. People clamored to see the famous outlaw in funeral parlors and at carnivals. Although it is difficult to trace all of his travels, he eventually ended up in Long Beach, California, where someone apparently mistook him for a prop. McCarty was hanged in the Laughing Room at the New Pike amusement park. That he was human was discovered by a crew member of the television program, The $6 Million Man, in 1976. He tried to correct the scarecrow and dislocated his actual arm. The following year, the corpse was finally committed to the ground. Guys, if you liked our video, but you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe right now and post the video on social networks. There will be a lot of interesting stuff in the next episodes. See you soon. Bye.